We have a guest who you've probably seen most weeks on our show. Jessica Farry is here, local journalist, because I can't say that you work for just one. We mostly know you from the Sligo Champion, but you are spread across so many different mediums out there. It's nice to have you live in the studio on camera.
It's nice to be here, Brendan. It's weird being asked the questions rather than asking the questions.
Because I said that to you, you've never really been asked by anyone in an interview. I suppose no one really interviews the reporters too often to find out their story.
No, most people would say we're not interested enough. That's why we're the ones doing the interviewing.
Well, look, we'll find out in the next 15 or 20 minutes. So look, I suppose anyone that does not know you, can you tell us a bit more about what you do and what's your career?
Yeah, so I'd say I'm a journalist, but I'm across a number of areas. I would be sports and news. I'm from Sligo. I work in the Sligo Champion, and I do a little bit for maybe Ocean FM. I've done a commentary recently, sports commentary, Premier League, for News Talk. I have my finger in a couple of pies, I suppose you could say. It's no harm to kind of diversify a little bit.
Yeah, I can imagine. Very much a freelance.
Yeah. So I would have done bits and pieces for Air Sport back in the day as well. And God, before that, I used to be in Setanta Sports for little bits and pieces on the Premier League day when I'd be kind of on the other side of it. Then I was doing some of the production bits and pieces in the background for graphics and things like that. So yeah. That's me really in a nutshell.
College-wise, was it just journalism, or when you say you did some of the production side of things, was that part of your journalism? Yeah,
so journalism in DCU, actually, they kind of gotcha. Some of the modules were about kind of the production side of things. Okay. I did one module, and I always say this, at the time, I hated this one particular class, and it was called News Design.
Okay.
And it was about literally designing a newspaper or a magazine. And someone had told me beforehand, if you do one class, do this one, because it will stick with you.
Just handy to have, right?
Yeah, so some of it was Photoshop, terrible at Photoshop, really bad at Photoshop. My hand is not steady enough. But then when it got down to the kind of actually designing the paper and all that kind of thing, I picked it up. And it's actually the one module that I've used ever since I left college. In my day-to-day job, I use it every single day.
That's what I was going to say. So you do lay out some of the
paper?
Do
all the layout and design in the Champion ourselves. So that's actually really stuck with me since, which is hilarious. But we did a couple of other classes which involved things like sound editing and video editing and video recording and all that kind of stuff. So they basically had you prepared for everything.
Well, I imagine in the various roles you do, you go, I need to be able to edit this myself, send it off, get it clipped, get it right. So you're prepared for all.
I think the course there, the idea is that it's geared towards your career afterwards. So a lot of what we did were classes in radio reporting, radio news, radio packages, kind of TV reporting, all that sort of TV news as well, all that kind of thing. And then you have to do a placement afterwards. But one of the best things about it was there's a radio station, DCU FM.
Yes. Okay.
They've won a lot of awards. And then there's the college newspaper there too. And that's kind of where you pick up most of the stuff, because even working in the radio station there, I'd never done anything obviously when I was going to college. And getting to do that, and it meant that you were ringing people asking for interviews, and you know yourself when you're first ringing someone for an interview, you are so nervous ringing someone, because if they say no, they don't know who you are, you're ringing someone saying, "Oh hi, it's Jessica here from DCU FM," and they're like, "What is DCU FM?" People were really good, and you kind of learned an awful lot of the smaller stuff there from doing that. And
absolutely.
You learned how to take the rejection as well when people are like, "No thanks," or "How did you get my number?" That kind of thing.
Okay, probably GDPR things nowadays.
It wouldn't wash nowadays. That was a really, really good starting point, I have to say, and I learned an awful lot from those early days, even in the college newspaper too, Well,
that was brilliant that they were there on campus to do them. So I was going to say, when did your career I was going to say sports journalism, but in general journalism, was their placement, was your first time doing it in the real world as such?
Yeah, it was, and even actually just before that kind of, and I always say, I've been really lucky in that, one day I was in college and I think I was wearing my Sligo Rovers jersey, and a guy in my class just came up to me and he was like, "Listen, I do bits and pieces about the League of Ireland for this website called extratime.ie. It's not paid, but we actually need someone in Sligo to do matches and all that kind of thing. Would you be interested?" And I was kind of like, I would never get this opportunity to do it anywhere. And at that stage, I didn't need to be paid. I was in college and I was learning. Wasn't good enough to be paid anyway, So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do this. And that was kind of, again, where I picked up an awful lot, learned more about interviewing and kind of writing match reports and all that kind of basic stuff through that. And then after that, it was kind of, I think the Champion contacted me then when I was in the second year and asked would I do a Rovers column every single week in the paper. And again, that was brilliant to get. It was a good way to get your name out there, And then after that, placement. I did my placement in the Irish Daily Mail sports section because, again, the sports editor was from Sligo, so I knew someone who knew someone who knew him. So then he brought me in for, I initially asked him, could I go in for a couple of weeks at Christmas, because we had a really long Christmas break because we had no exams. So he was like, come in for 2 weeks, and then he was like, if you want to do your placement here, do it here. So that was brilliant as well, because he had me doing everything, like, stuff I hadn't a notion about, like cricket and all of this.
Oh no.
So it was brilliant. It was brilliant, like, because I just had to just like plunge myself into it and say, right, this is it, I'll do it, and that's it.
And with a lot of those, those early jobs, reporting was like, look, just go and write it yourself, or were they, do you know what I mean? Were they like, what's that? Were they critical? Were they helpful? Or were you like doing it really well?
I would say helpful, very, very helpful, because I mean, constructing it in terms of the style of the newspaper or whatever was something I didn't really know, and we'd been taught a certain way in college, and obviously not everybody has the same style. So then, at least when I was there, I had someone who was able to stand over me and say, okay, listen, this bit is good, we're just going to change this around a little bit, make it punchier and all that kind of thing. So I did. I learned an awful lot from there. It was definitely very, very useful. Yeah,
what is this? I imagine it's the catchy headline. What's the first paragraph? Oh, I will read this.
Yeah.
So I suppose that's an important part, getting all that right.
Definitely.
And which do you prefer? Do you prefer in the paper, or do you prefer out and about live radio, TV?
See, this is a really hard question, because when I was in college, I kept changing my mind as well. 1 week I was like, no, I love seeing your name in the paper, like, nothing beats it. Yeah. And then other times radio was great as well. Both of them have advantages and disadvantages in that, a newspaper, it can take so long to put something together. But when it's done, it's kind of done. And radio, it's the immediacy of it. Which
and just the live.
There's also the downside to that too, because you can't correct something that you've said or got wrong. I know. I love both of them really. Like obviously, paper is probably the one I prefer the most, but radio is definitely really, really close behind. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, you're very lucky, as you said. Locally, you have all these outlets that you're getting work with. So
and I've been lucky too. I'm very.
Sorry, I say lucky. I mean, obviously, well able to do it. It's great, but I'm just in town. There's such good media outlets.
But I suppose you kind of need someone who's going to take a chance on you, and that's the thing with like the radio stuff here with Austin O'Callaghan as well. He just rang me randomly one day and was like, "Would you be interested in doing commentary?" I had never done it before.
Oh, you'd never done any?
I'd never done any match commentary before. So I did it with like no training or no experience or anything really. Oops. And I'm the kind of person who I always say, like, I just believe that you should always challenge yourself. Absolutely. Anyway, get out of your comfort zone. Like I was so nervous. I'm still nervous now when I do radio, like,
Yeah. Well, I can imagine.
I'm very, very new to it. So even when I do it now, I'm nervous, but like, it's a good way to be, I think. I think you should sort of
push yourself into it, get the adrenaline rush. And
exactly.
I think you're always living when that adrenaline is
yeah, exactly. And I think it's good to kind of push yourself out of that comfort zone every so often.
And so, like, what's a normal week for you? So, I mean, I was asking before you came on, like, I presume today, because the paper is out on a Tuesday, that must be a calm day. But, like, apart from the paper, like, from a Monday to a Sunday, on average, what's kind of your week involved, like, with all the live
so
sport?
Monday is obviously crazy with the paper comes out, and that can often be a late day. Tuesday is a lot quieter, obviously. And then Wednesday kind of picks up again. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday gets very busy. It depends then on Sligo Rovers. If they're away, I could be going to Tala or Limerick or anywhere in Dublin or Waterford or Cork or Derry or somewhere on a Friday night. And if that's not the case, then often there's a game in the showgrounds on Saturday. I often try to, if I have time, to kind of get that done over the weekend when it's fresh in my brain. Sunday, there's often bits and pieces of work to be done on Sunday. I try always to get to a junior soccer game on a Sunday.
All right, so go and watch one every weekend.
Yeah.
Wow.
And sometimes that can be work as well, because it depends on if there's an important game on or not, junior soccer, and then I'll end up doing that. And sometimes if there's Connacht Cup or something, other newspapers in Mayo or radio stations might give us a ring and say, listen, is anybody going to that game? So
just give us back some info, like.
Yeah, basically,
So it's non-stop. And then, as you said, you throw in a live commentary as well as just paper reporting. You could have a live commentary to do. And I imagine I will get to this a bit later on about the Premier League one, like, but that must take ages to go, oh, I have to commentate now on Saturday night as well as my normal job. Like, that must take hours. Like,
yeah, it takes a little bit of preparation, because when you're trying to kind of do both. So the great thing, as I said about radio, is that it's immediate. So you don't need to sit down and take notes and then put it all together afterwards. But when you're doing both, it means you do.
Right.
So you're there doing radio and you're, it's all grand. But once that's over, you have to put it all together for a report then. And not to mention all the, as we spoke before we came on air about like the preparation that goes into it beforehand. There's a fair bit. But once you kind of get into the routine of it, it's not so bad. But yeah, there is a fair bit of work that goes into before a radio commentary. So it's not just what you hear on the radio; it's the
stats building,
it's
and
the
all
stats,
that
the
stuff,
hours, the hours the night before, trying to put bits and pieces together.
And as you said, commentating about you might know Sligo Rovers inside out, but you might not know the opposition. And you're probably not obliged to know every stat about them, but you probably, I imagine, go, no, I want it to be good. So you probably delve in even deeper then.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's going to be a gap. There's going to be a time where something happens, and you can't keep talking about the one player, the one team. And I know, I obviously did the commentary on the Sligo Rovers Hafnarfjordur game in the Europa League.
That's an Icelandic team. If you thought she was just what is that she just said?
Well, that was a challenge because the Icelandic League wouldn't be as well supported, say, as the League of Ireland. So finding information about their players was tough going. I ended up on most of their Instagram pages, trying to see if any of them.
Or just stalking them. I have to do that a bit here, yeah.
I was on their LinkedIn pages too, because most of them actually had proper full-time jobs too, along with playing football. So I was okay, well, at least if I'm stuck, I can just say what they do is for their daytime job, you know. But yeah, no, that was...
when you sit down to commentate, do you have pages of stats, or do you just go, I'll have one page in each team and that'll cover me for silence?
I generally have pages, so I try to have a few stats on every single player in each squad, and then there's stats on the teams, and maybe just more general interesting filler stuff, just in case there's a big gap or something like that, and you kind of need something just to fill.
How did you get on with the names in that? It was they're Icelandic, you said, was it?
Their
names must have been fun.
Yeah, there was a lot of practice, and there was a lot of YouTube and Google, and I found a website that gave you really good direction on how to pronounce Icelandic names and words and letters, and one letter will be pronounced differently if it's before this letter or after that letter and all that. So I just literally sat down with a piece of paper and wrote them all out phonetically.
Right.
And just tried my best to learn them.
Well, imagine that's the hours and hours people don't see, which is why I was fascinated when I said, I'd love to have you on. It's learning those little nuggets, because it takes hours.
It does
rather
take
than just
hours.
the hour and a half of commentating.
Yeah, no, it does.
And in local media, and I mean, we're very lucky we have lots of great local media, but I'm sure you're the same. I know you do news, you do entertainment, you do sport. Again, do you just kind of jump in and go, I'll just report in that gig? Or again, will you go, I better learn a bit more about them? So have you a facet you love most? Do you love sport the most, I'm guessing? Or do you like juicy bit of news? Or is the entertainment kind of your thing as well?
Yeah,
or what's your kind of favourite?
People ask me this all the time, and obviously sport is my thing, but I love doing not sport.
Yeah,
at
give
the
yourself
same
a break,
time.
I imagine.
Yeah, no, I do. I really do. And the great thing about our job is that every single day is so different, and every single week is so different. And you might spend 2 days in 1 week covering one council meeting that all needs to be typed up and all that. And even that in itself, I know people have this theory that council meetings and that are boring, but they're not always.
Well, I'd say they're not always.
Yeah, and there can be some very exciting exchanges, heated exchanges, shall we say. But yeah, and I always say that's the one thing that's great about our job, is that you're doing something different every single week. And even if it's entertainment, you don't know who you're going to be interviewing. You could be interviewing anybody, if there's a gig in the Hawkswell or Anderson's, or if there's something on in the Model or whatever, there's always something on. Yeah, and there's always interesting people you get to interview too as well through that. So it's pretty. And
would you ever just come back to the council, would you ever get anyone afterwards going, oh, don't mention what happened there? Would you ever get hinted, oh, don't say what I said there, or they can't probably say it to you?
It happens sometimes, but then usually it's, oh, why did you put that in? Or, and you're God, But
you're on the coalface, so you go, look, I have to stick my neck out probably sometimes and just bear with it.
And then listen, you get things wrong in council meetings all the time.
Yes, okay. Little correction squares that we see, is it?
Yeah, we all do. They can be really small things, but what seems like a small thing to some people is obviously isn't to others,
I'm sure all part of the job, all fun. So, I mean, we've already established, obviously, you are a sports fanatic, but on your days off, do you watch more sport? Do you go to matches? Do you be reading up? Do you always have to stay in that bubble?
Yeah, and I think, and this is all part of it, in the sense that I love sport, and I'm lucky that my job is kind of going to sport, Sunday I was at 2 junior soccer matches. I was at Ohana against Carberry, and then I was at Killarney United against St. John's, just for the love of it, more so than anything else.
You said you go to matches anyways.
Yeah.
It's not just I better go and report this. But then when you're there, you'll always report, or
sometimes it depends. Yeah, no, it depends on what the story is. But yeah, I'm generally always watching it on television. Yeah. Anyway, in my spare time, if there's a match on, if there's tennis on, if there's anything on, I'd always try and watch it anyway. I just love it. And I think it's just one of those things that when you like sport, you'll generally follow it if there's something on,
But, yeah, and I mean, you can't go in 2 days later and not realise, he got sent off to the day, or there was a big brawl in the rugby match.
Yeah, and it's the thing with social media as well, is that it's impossible to avoid
it. It's everywhere.
Anyway, so it's everywhere. So you do know if something happens,
Yeah. Well, I was in the car radio a few weeks ago, and then there was a live Premier League match on News Talk, as you were saying earlier on, and then I only realised that was your first time ever doing it.
Yeah. It was West Ham against Spurs.
Yes.
I'm lucky I'm a West Ham fan. So
God, you're winning all sides.
I got a call out of the blue, asked would I cover that game for Newstalk. So that was great. It was a great experience. I'd never done it for them before. Apparently I was the first female lead commentator for Newstalk.
Well done. That's class.
So it was a surprise. It was a great experience. Hopefully there'll be more down the line. But yeah, it was just a totally different experience for me.
And
anyway.
I mean, imagine you again for that. I mean, commentating Sligo Rovers, commentating there. Like, do you connect with your co-commentator beforehand? Do you chat to them, say, these are my pieces I'll talk about. Will you want to talk about them, or it's just what's going on?
Pretty much,
really.
Yeah. I had Keith Tracy with me, former Republic of Ireland international, and we hadn't met before, except when I had to go down to the door to let him in. And then because of COVID, we were kept separate in separate rooms. So that was a little bit trickier when you're doing the commentary. But there's kind of a not intuition. I'm not going to say intuition, but the co-commentator kind of knows when you stop talking.
That I'm in here.
Yeah.
And
even if you stop to take a breath, because a lot of the time you're just talking if there's a break in play, or you're talking for the sake of talking kind of thing. Yeah. So they'll know, and then they can come in and there's not that many interruptions. You would think there is, but usually you kind of understand when they might want to come in.
When they're going to have a break.
You hear them taking the deep breath before they go to speak into the microphone. So you say, "Oh, he wants to come in." Just get the
natural. I mean, you're at it this time now. You probably just get a flow of it anyways. That's how I says like. Don't talk over me again in the second half. None of that. It's just like
none of that. Absolutely none of that.
Go with the flow. But yeah, not to be in the same room. I mean, I was listening and it sounded brilliant.
That was a weird, really strange experience. Wow. Yeah, because you see, like at Sligo Rovers games now and all that, we're kind of allowed. There's a while there where there needs to be 3 seats between you and your co-commentator, which is really hard to hear your co-commentator if you didn't have headphones on. But that's all kind of coming away now a little bit because COVID restrictions are easing and all that kind of thing. But yeah, no, that was strange not being in the same room, but we got through it anyway. So.
Yeah, I mean, there must be loads of fascinating adrenaline rushes, like even after a match where you're not commentating, where you're just giving you did this with Air Sport, I think, was it before?
Yeah.
So, like, from the match finishes, they come fairly quickly. Like, how long do you have to prepare that?
The Air Sport thing was like 2 minutes.
2 minutes to go.
Yeah.
And when you're talking, and again, I watch loads of the Sky Sports ones where the guys are reporting. There's no script.
Oh no,
they just have to say what they remember off the bat of their head.
I would scribble things down and then try to remember like key moments so that I can say whatever. Like, and there's a couple of times where you'd be trying to stick a pun in or something, and there's just not the time, and you're panicking because time is running out, and you're like, oh God. And you're so nervous, but again, when it's over, then you're like, oh God, thank God that's over. Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's an amazing skill and a unique skill to be able to do that, because not everyone definitely could do that.
No, but that takes a lot of practice.
No, I imagine so. I presume you were doing them at home to the bedroom window or the mirror, like, was it just reacting?
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, and have you had any funny or embarrassing moments over the years, whether you were commentating or something you've seen in a match, or was that that sticks out?
God, funny moments. I'm trying to think. Like, obviously, plenty of embarrassing moments when you're being shouted at by football managers or something because of something you've said or done.
Oh, right, okay.
But the most recent one I can think of is when I was on commentary with a former Sligo Rovers player, Alan Keane, and he's a fireman.
Yes.
And so he was on call, and before the game he made a joke like, I might have to go out, if my alarm goes off, and you're like, okay, whatever. And then I'm standing at the gate and I see him running out the gate and I can hear the alarm going, and I'm like, oh no, it's actually happening. So he had to go literally fight a fire, and I was on my own.
For the whole match, or he
the
didn't come
match,
in?
Yeah. Thankfully there was nobody hurt or anything in the fire. But Keno milked it then for a few weeks after that. He was all over the newspapers talking about being a fireman,
Oh, right, so a win-win for him too. But yeah, I mean, you had a lot of talking to that night, I imagine.
Oh God, yeah, and I think it was a terrible game if I remember correctly, and I was like, oh, this is awful.
Even harder to come up with stuff like.
Got through it. It's okay.
And is there, I know you love loads of sports, we said, but is there any sports you don't like so much?
I've never got into like American football.
Oh, okay.
I have tried.
Yeah.
It's on too late at night for me, Brendan.
I would often tune into Super Bowl because of the spectacle. And you know what, sometimes I enjoyed but the game, but I know what you mean, it goes on so long.
Yeah, and another sport I can't get into, and again, I have tried, is cricket.
Yes, Ireland were in the World Cup a number of years ago. Again, I think they made it a bit more fun.
Everyone got behind the cricket team that time, but it's a sport I don't fully understand. Maybe if I did, I'd get it better. But yeah. That and American football are two sports
they won't be featured in the Sligo Champion anytime soon. So.
Well, they might be.
There's a local cricket team too.
Yeah, there is a local cricket team. Yeah,
so you never know.
They have been featured a couple of times. Yeah.
And obviously, with your job, you've been at loads of amazing moments. What was your favourite sporting moment that you got to witness live? Maybe as a fan, maybe with work.
Yeah, well, I think there'd be no surprise if I told you that it was the 2013 FAI Cup final when Anthony Elding scored that 94th minute winner. It was like, of all the moments I've ever seen, that's the one I watch and it still gives me goosebumps. And it was the one time I was in the press box. And I keep my cool always in the press box. I never cheer or anything, but I lost it that day. Like,
yeah, rightfully so.
Oh, it was an amazing day. I'll never forget it. Like, we thought it was heading for extra time, and then he goes and he gets that 94th, and it was the celebration, the jersey ripped off. And,
yeah. There's nothing like that raw emotion, is there?
It was incredible. It was incredible. Yeah, definitely. It's my favourite moment ever. Yeah.
So to go on from here, before we let you go, what's any plans or dreams? You kind of happy you are? Would you kind of, someone said we want you, doing the news on RTE or Sky Sports, would you love that, or are you kind of like, happy you are? Or what's the dream?
It is, and this is a question I get asked loads as well, and I always say I really, it's not something I ever think about,
It can just
and I think
follow its own path. Maybe.
Yeah, I think so, and I think even now, like, the media is changing so much, and even for us in the Champion, a lot of what we're doing now is kind of focusing more on the digital aspect of things. And like, I expect that would probably grow and grow as time goes on, and it'll probably move towards a more multimedia kind of thing anyway, eventually, because that's just the way newspapers are going now. I don't have any plans as such for the future, and I'm one of these people who I just kind of sit tight and see what happens.
Well, it seems to be working out really well for you. The way that all these stories you told is fascinating, and well done what you've done. It's lovely to hear all the story. And as I said, just from a nerdy sports fan point of view, what's it like behind the mic there? So lovely having you live in the studio. We'll have you back next week, be telling you, giving us your news or sport reports, and the best of luck for everything in the future.
Thanks a million, Brendan. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
You're very welcome. So if you liked what you just seen, don't forget to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel here. We've loads of great interviews from a load of really interesting people over the series. And if you're on social media, which I'm sure loads of you are, we are on Instagram and Facebook, so give us a follow there.